the search for answers continues for Miami. Obviously, 3-game losing streak, 2-9 in our last 5-7 overall in the last 12, 2-8 or something in the last 10 against or Power 5 teams. So yeah, like a lot of bad, honestly. Travis Homer is dealing with the calf, hamstring, back of the leg kind of injury. So he did not practice today. He took mental reps. He practiced sparingly a couple other days, as reported. So he'll probably be involved. He'll probably play on Saturday, but maybe not be at 100% full strength. So then DJ Dallas will get more carries, and he needs a bounce back game because even though he had a long touchdown last week against Duke, he fumbled 3 times and lost 2 of them, which was pretty bad. And, DJ is one of my favorite players on the team, and he does very well. I mean, he had some good plays, but he also had some bad plays. The quarterback quandary continues. N'Kosi Perry and Malik Rozier are rotating first-team snaps in practice this week, as was reported, which makes no sense to me because I don't understand why the singular focus and support to keep playing Malik Rozier, whatever you want to call him, number 12. But that's ongoing. So Mark Richt said that he's going to decide, hopefully by, as we record on Wednesday, he said tomorrow. So by Thursday, if you're listening to this later, that he will have decided, Mark Richt, that is, on a quarterback. And the plan is to play 1. So evaluating 2, and the plan, I believe I saw that posted, was to play 1. We'll see. Because there have been statements in the past about, if you deserve to play, then we'll find a way to get you on the field or things like that. And, in that game at Boston College, yeah, he said that about N'Kosi Perry, and N'Kosi Perry didn't play a single snap. Mark Richt said a similar thing about Jarren Williams this week. So I fully expect Jarren Williams to take 0 snaps this week. Additionally, because Jarren Williams has already played in 1 game, and if he plays this week, then that means he'll have to not play one of the remaining 3 games, so he doesn't go over the redshirt threshold. But if you hold him out until the Virginia Tech game and then play him from there through the end of the year, assuming Miami does not get to the ACC championship game, which is a very long shot at this point. But then you have Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, and a bowl game, and then he can play all 3 of those games consecutively to end the year and still retain his red shirt. So, that's an ongoing thing. And yeah, everybody sees what's going on. Manny Diaz, the defensive coordinator, said what happened on Saturday night was wrong. The search for answers continues. And it's frustrating, just because Miami was in a similar but opposite spot years ago when Al Golden was the coach, in being intractable about changing the defensive scheme and methodology, and that was the side of the ball that was holding us back. And now we get Manny Diaz to come in with this new staff, Mark Richt obviously being the head coach, and he, switched from that wannabe Rutgers, Penn State-ish, whatever, and said, look, we're going to be fast, we're going to get up the field, we're going to wreak havoc, we're going to do all these things, we're going to take advantage of these Miami area athletes and not take a guy like an Anthony Chickillo, who was a freshman All-American at 255 pounds, and then you blew him up to 295 or 305. In the course of his career, because you wanted him to be, that 3-4 defensive end, maybe slide inside to the nose. He was never built like that, and you're not trying to change people into sizes and things or weights that their bodies aren't naturally built for. So, but then the defense is doing amazingly, and the offense is letting everything down. And yeah, my SB Nation colleague, Bill Connolly, he wrote about this yesterday on Tuesday. And I wrote something different, but also evaluating the Miami Hurricanes program. And Bill Connolly called it bowdening, which is so it was a phenomenal read. He talks about, bringing in your son, and it was Jeff Bowden to be the offensive coordinator at Florida State. And the offense was atrocious when he was there. And I loved it because, I'm Miami, hello, like all day. But it was terrible. And he, obviously, because you have that nepotism, you have that familial connection, you're going to overlook the shortcomings that you would not accept from a staff member who was not related to you. And Richt is doing that in leaving himself as the offensive coordinator and his son at quarterbacks coach. And yeah, you try to look for the bright side of things sometimes, but I believe that I was wrong about John Richt. You know, he just needs to go. I couldn't believe when I read Bill Connolly's piece, we hired John Richt when he was 25 with no experience. Like that just blew my mind. Like I knew that it was a move of nepotism to, okay, I'm the head coach, so I can hire my son and whatever. But yeah. So Bill Connolly wrote about Bowdening and how that's a thing that Mark Richt is emulating that obviously is poor. And then I wrote, 3 keys to rebuilding Miami or to turn things around. And, the first one was, you change an offensive philosophy into embracing more of a spread by alignment and, scheme and spacing and, tempo as well. And then 2, there have to be staff changes. And I already told you about 2. Mark Richt cannot call offensive plays. Manny Navarro of The Athletic, he wrote the same thing. He said he cannot be the play caller anymore. And John Richt needs to go because usually your play caller or your offensive coordinator is going to be the quarterback's coach. So that means we need a slot for that. And there's some other things that I wrote as well. And then the final key of those 3 was recruiting, which, that's a dicey interaction right now. But yeah, I mean, it's just, and I know that I kind of been rambling for a bit here, but that's kind of just where we are. It's just everywhere that you look, there's a question without an answer. And for a team that was favored coming into the year in every single game, including the LSU game. And I know it was only like 1.5 points, but still, you're favored in every game until this week because Miami has now proven themselves to be in such an atrocious state that the Canes are an underdog at Georgia Tech this week for the first time all season. But you have all this talent and you have these expectations again for a season that Miami's been building to for 3 or 4 years. And I mean, we're 60 minutes away from Miami being a 5-5 ball team. And that's pretty bad.
Yeah, it is really bad considering the state of the division and the expectations for this team, considering the talent and the recruiting rankings and what happened last year, albeit 3 losses at the end, but that was kind of discarded as being not necessarily an aberration, but that this team would own that division. And I was included in those people that felt as though that was a foregone conclusion. All sorts of people chiming in here. When you bring up Mark Richt and what's been said about all these issues, but the quarterback situation being the primary one and the quarterback's coach, I would love doing what I attempt to do here to be able to watch the 25 to 35 relevant or best teams news conferences each week, but I just can't do it. What is the nature of these news conferences in regards to, does he really get pressed about these issues and does he give the pat answer or does he give any type of relevant or meaningful information?
I mean, he gets pressed as far as the people who are there can press. I mean, you can't really go off the deep end, and like, hey, jerk or whatever, like, you're gonna answer me, I mean, you can't like strong arm him or anything, even less so because Miami is a private school. So like, the ability to be withholding of information is the structure is there differently at Miami than at a Georgia or Texas or anywhere else that's a public university. So there's that. So the question is asked, or the questions are asked repeatedly, questions that need answers, like, okay, well, Miami's scored less points every single week the last 3 weeks, 14, 13, and 12. You had Malik Rozier come out earlier in the year and said 40 points a game is the standard. I don't care who you're playing. Miami has 39 points in 3 weeks. You know what I mean? I mean, like, these things are asked, and you ask about the quarterbacks, what was there ever, at the Boston College game, what was the methodology? Was there a thought of going to N'Kosi Perry? No, there wasn't. Look, you've talked about every week this year about going to or wanting to go back or, Malik Rozier, but then that game, there was never a thought. You know what I mean? Like, these things are asked. And, Mark Richt knows that he has the power in this situation, especially again with Miami being a private school. So he answers, but sometimes you do get canned answers. A lot of times you will get coach speak, and then follow-up questions will be asked, and the level of clarity is maybe murky at best. So he's not really getting into Mark Richt. That is, he doesn't really talk about things in practice. He just says, "Well, we see things in practice that you don't see." Like what? Well, it's just in practice. Like what? Like, is Malik Rozier? I mean, I know you chart every throw. Is he 70% in practice? And if he is, so then what's the problem moving to games? You know what I mean? If like, are you seeing, like, is N'Kosi Perry fumbling the ball all the time? Is Jaron Williams hitting only 22%? Or he, when you do red zone drills, the offense only scores on 1 out of 3%. Like, I want to know what these things are, and everybody wants to know what these things are. But it's just one of those. It basically boils down to, if you were, everybody was. When you're a child and you ask a question and eventually it gets to the point of, "'cause I said so." That's where Mark Richt is now. Like, we have valid questions. I mean, we're not kids. Like, you have, people who are adults, like, who have been in and around sports for a long time, whether it's playing, whether it's covering, whether, whatever. But you have learned people, intelligent people asking intelligent questions. And it gets to the point where, like, he's backed into a corner. So, like, because I said so. So, I mean, are the questions asked? Yes. Are answers given? Yes. Is it anywhere near the level of clarity that we would want? No. And I don't expect like full clarity. I'm not expecting him to come out and give us the whole chapter and verse and, okay, well, this is everything that's going on in practice and everything behind the scenes and whatnot. And I mean, like, no, that would be asinine. And like, I mean, I know that, Mark Richt goes on the radio every Monday morning, and Joe Rose, the local host down here, asked him something schematic, to like, or to get towards that. So like, what are the, the route combinations that you can do to update or things like that? And Mark Richt simply said, he said, "I'm not going to do that on the radio. I'm not going to get into X's and O's," which is similar to a couple of years ago. If you remember, in the NBA finals, it was leaked that Andre Iguodala was going to start for the Golden State Warriors. And Steve Kerr was asked point blank about that before the game. And he just said, "We're the Warriors. We're going to do what we do. We have our starters, and that's it." He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. But he was like, "I'm like, what would I gain from 4 hours before the game giving away this trump card that we had, like, by going with the death lineup to start? Like, why would I tell my opponent the scheme that we're trying to use to beat them?" And I get that part of it, but there is much to be desired about the methodology. And again, I've been saying this for a long time. I have no earthly idea why Mark Richt supports Malik Rozier singularly the way he does more than any other player on the roster. It makes no sense to me, given the results that we've seen and the performances that we've seen. It just makes no sense. And that's a question that has been asked and has not been answered. And that's the question out of anything else. That's the question I want an answer to.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you take away the N'Kosi Perry games, which total maybe 2.5 or so, we're working on about 8 or 9 awful games for the most part, from Rozier going back to the end of last season.
Not even the end of last season, because even again, and I said this with you, even when Miami was winning, there was much to be desired. And again, I can go back over these 4 for 16 for 34 yards in an interception in the first half at Florida State. That whole Georgia Tech game, that was a loss, the Pittsburgh game. But even before that, North Carolina was not good. Syracuse first half was not good. Virginia first half, you hit a couple throws, okay. But I mean, like, there were things that Toledo first half, you know what I mean? Like, there were times last year, even when Miami was winning, and by hook or by crook, by smoke and mirrors, or, duct tape, which, has a light side and dark side and will, put the world together. That was how Miami won those games. You have defense. It was opportunistic, impactful by getting turnovers. You get a short field, you do all these kind of things. But, I kept writing it in our grades and our recap, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I was like, I get that there's a win, and I like winning, and I hate losing, but we cannot ignore what's going on at the quarterback position. And people called me a hater, but go back and look at those. Go back and look at the game by game numbers. CFBstats.com. They don't pay me. I just use the site a lot for statistics. Go back, click on passing, click on 2017, click on Malik Rozier, and on the side, click on game log. And you go back and look at those numbers game by game. And I'm telling you, it's not even just this year. It extends back. And that's where the nature of my and a lot of people's frustration comes from, because we have seen who he is, Malik Rozier. And again, I wrote this summer already. To take a step forward, Miami has to move on from Malik Rozier. Miami did not move on from Malik Rozier, and hoped against hope, absent any kind of development or proof or foundation, that he was going to be a different player than we had seen. Malik Rozier is a different player than we had seen, in a worse way. And the win and loss record reflects that, because Miami got by and won games that rightfully they should not have last year. And this year, we got to pay that bill.
Yeah, and then those are stats, and they typically give you most of the picture. And then, as we talked about last season, you could give me the song and verse, the chapter and verse of the various throws. The one that comes to mind, and I'm not talking about one throw, I'm talking about repeated, the slant to Berrios. This would happen about 2 to 3 times a game, where Braxton Berrios would need to go down to a hip, or slide and catch it behind him, and where he would have been traveling for 30 or 35 yards with the ball after the catch, with a decent quarterback throwing it on time.
Right. I mean, hey, it's a completion. It got there. And I mean, that's a win, because, Malik was only completing 51 or 54% of his passes, or it was 54% for the year and 41% in the 3 losses. So, yeah, but I mean, I don't know. But, like I said, Miami won games that reasonably, especially with the performance from the quarterback position, which, look, quarterback, you get the praise and you get the bad as well. If teams do well, quarterbacks get that praise, but if they do, bad, they get the blame. And yeah, it was just, and I would bet good money that Mark Richt is going to start Malik Rozier on Saturday too.